Welcome to Mission in Motion, a minute with Maxwell, where we explore the intersection of people, purpose, and possibility in leadership. Today, I'm joined by an exceptional leader, Salimah Walji Shivji, CEO of AgeCare, one of Canada's leading senior living organizations.
You don't, as a leader, want to be the barrier for your team, for them to be able to move things forward. And so, being available, giving guidance as needed, asking the right questions, I think all of those pieces are really important.
AgeCare is dedicated to creating vibrant seniors communities that celebrate and support aging with dignity, independence, and community interaction.
I always say to people, AgeCare is a people business. We don't make widgets. All of those things are important, but that's not who we are. And so I think what's most important to me from an aged care perspective is that we're taking good care of the individuals that their loved ones have trusted us with.
What makes today's conversation particularly compelling is not just the scale of leadership, but the journey behind it. From social worker to lawyer to CEO, and how those experiences have shaped a deeply human and values-driven leadership approach. Let's get into it. I'm Heather Maxwell, and I would love for you to join A Minute with Maxwell, Mission in Motion. Salimah, I am so excited to have you join us on our podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you for the invite, Heather. That's great.
So, Salimah, I love to start our podcast by asking each guest what their first job was and what that experience taught them that still shows up in how they lead today.
Great. Yeah. When I read this question, I kind of chuckled. So my first job was, I think, at 15, working at Senza, which is a store similar to, I guess, what we would see now around Levis Rose or something of that sort. Senza is no longer in business. It was a Canadian store, and I took on the job with a really good friend of mine. We both sort of went downtown Calgary and applied together. And spent several years there during my school breaks and summers working. It was a very fun job. We worked hard. By the end of the days, our store was a disaster, and we spent a lot of time putting it all back together. As you can imagine, lots of little tiny items. But yeah, a really great first job, I think.
Oh, amazing. I think so many of us started our first jobs in retail, but I think that's really good because retail generally has great training, right? And we learn a lot from that. So that's great that you started out in retail as well. And so, what specifically about that experience shaped your work ethic or mindset?
So, yeah, I was also thinking about this. I mean, I think a couple of things. One is around the service component. In many ways, retail is not different than the type of line of business that we're in right now. We service people in our line of business as well. And I think that has always been something that has really struck with me around, how do you appropriately respond to a customer? How do you interact with a customer? And whether you're a customer in retail or whether you're a customer in healthcare, the same is true, that you still are the customer and that there still is a deference and a relationship that needs to be built with this individual. Albeit that through retail, it's more sporadic and transitory, whereas in our sector, we're lucky. We have individuals that live with us, 15, 18 months. So we get to build deeper relationships. But the same holds true around, how we approach people, how we interact, the tone in which we speak to individuals, the kindness that has to exude in our interactions. And so lots of similarities, and particularly in retail at La Senza, it was a large organization. There was a lot of focus on training and customer service. And so I don't remember a lot of it. Obviously, it was a very long time ago, but I think it shapes sort of who you are as a person. And so interesting that, the sector that I'm still in has a very strong service element to it.
Yes, that is so true. That is so true. And so, was there a person or a moment in that job that stayed with you?
I I don't remember specific instances. I remember the chaos of Christmas very clearly. As you can imagine, that or Valentine's Day or Mother's Day, sort of, those pinnacle landmarks, hallmarks, I guess, of sort of when there would be a lot of frenzy in the store. I remember the feeling of exhaustion and being overwhelmed. Long lineups, a store that looked like basically a tornado had been through it. But I think the piece that stays with me is that I had an amazing group of colleagues that worked with me, and so it didn't actually feel like work. We really enjoyed it, and we had a lot of fun together, and so that made the time pass. And so I do think that how we foster our relationships with our teams is really important, and that there has to be an element of fun. These jobs are hard if we fast forward to sort of the sector that we're in. And particularly in these types of roles, you're not really getting involved in things unless they're on fire, quite frankly, or there's an issue, right? If things are working, your teams are managing them. It's not really hitting your desk. But when we do this type of work, it is important to work with a senior leadership team that is, exceptional. And I've had that benefit. Just on Friday, our CFO of well over a decade retired. And it really, it's very sad. I'm so sad. But it really gives you a moment to pause and to think about, the wonderful people that you've had an opportunity to work with. Yeah.
Aw, that's amazing, and that says a lot that your CFO was there for over a decade as well, right? That's amazing to hear, and I know with my first job, I started off in retail too, and I'm still friends with my store manager, like, 40 some years later, and he taught me so much about relationship building and customer service and always putting the customer first. So I learned that as well from a very young age. And it is so important. You're right. Some of these jobs now today, as you mentioned, fast forward to seniors living, are quite challenging, and it's so important that we do have fun. We do have sort of a best friend at work that, we can talk to, and, it just makes it so much easier, right? And, when we're working together, friends at work, we, have some fun along the way as well. It's so important, isn't it? Now, can you walk us through, Salima, your path from, because you've had a very interesting career path from social worker to lawyer and now CEO. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, many of individuals who know me will hear me say that I'm really an accidental CEO. This was really never my plan. And often I think that that is the same for most of us. We kind of fall into different positions. Yeah. So I have an undergrad and a master's in clinical social work. My master's is in trauma. And then decided I wanted to do a PhD, and that didn't go over well in my home. My parents felt like, I needed to do something that was going to earn me a decent living, though having a PhD in social work would have done that. But this is sort of the cultural lens of our family. And so decided to apply to law school, only did a limited number of applications and I got in. And then worked really hard to be able to pair the health side of my interest with law, and so was very fortunate. Started my career at the Calgary Health Region, worked for the most fabulous man for well over a decade, David Wyand, who's become a mentor of mine, and then sort of was able to really shape my practice, and so spent 14 or so years practicing purely health law, which is a really interesting, very specific type of law. And then after that sort of tenure, left AHS and decided to sort of look at what else was out there. And actually met with Dr. Jibraj, one of the co-owners of AgeCare, and ended up here sort of, 6 weeks after leaving Calgary Health Region or Alberta Health Services at that time. Um,
Yes.
and then did a sort of general counsel role here. Obviously, my background was law. The CEO then asked if I would take on sort of like an engagement type sort of government relations aspect of it, and really enjoyed that. And then about, 4.5 years ago, moved into the COO role. Again, really out of the blue, just got asked if, this is something I would like to do. And then moved into the CEO role just over 2 years ago. So yeah, kind of not a trajectory that I would expect, not uncommon. I mean, many lawyers move into management and corporate sort of type positions, but yeah, I'm not sure as a child that you think that, or as a young adult that you think that this is a trajectory that you actually choose. And I for sure didn't. Yeah.
And I was just going to ask you that looking back, did you ever envision yourself as a CEO? And it doesn't sound like you did initially when you were younger.
No, I didn't, and I even think about sort of, discussions with my own, kids, right? Like, I mean, I don't think that, talking about being a CEO is something we talk about. We talk about being, a teacher or a vet or, a doctor or like lots of computer science, all these different things, but I'm not sure that,
Yes.
from a business perspective, we don't really talk about that as being an option. We should talk about it more, because I think it is a very real option for many people, including yourself. Yeah.
Yes, it's so true. And I think too, to your point that we have recognized in our sector, seniors living, that we don't talk about seniors living sector enough to young people to say this is a great, fabulous sector to get into, right? And it is a very purpose driven sector. So, we're always trying to encourage young people to consider the seniors living sector as a career. So I think you're right. We don't talk about all the roles that there are in seniors living, right? People sometimes think, I'm not a clinician, I can't work in that sector. And they don't realize sometimes that there's a broad number of jobs, like food services and HR, finance, programs, right? Maintenance. Like there are so many areas to get into in our sector. And so you're right. And operations like working your way up to, a VP of Ops or COO or CEO role. There are just so many opportunities, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that we need to do better at. When we think about the introduction or the prevalence of AI and all of these other pieces that we're sort of starting to see come in, even in our sector. I think the one thing that we know is not going to replace is the human touch and the care element of the work that we do. And so, even in schools, I think there's a lot of discussion around, becoming a nurse, but in a hospital, becoming a physician, but in a hospital. We have all of those positions in our communities as well, and as well as in primary care that we also don't talk about a lot. And so I think there's a real gap in the education that we provide our children, and also immigrants and individuals looking to shift into different workforce opportunities around, all the different areas where you actually can work. Because I came from acute care and it's not for everyone. There's many people that come into continuing care and think, wow, this is a way better fit for me as a person, depending on sort of where you came from. So I think you're absolutely right, Heather. I think we need to do better at making sure that we give people the options and that they understand that there's more to these professions than just what we see on TV. Yeah.
Yes. Like ER, right? Yes, it's so true. Oh, thank you for bringing that up though, Salima, because I think that is just so important. Absolutely.
This podcast is brought to you by Maxwell Management Group. For nearly 2 decades, we've worked side by side with individuals, teams, and organizations to uncover what makes them exceptional and to help them grow from the inside out. It's not just about reaching goals, it's about creating success that feels deeply authentic and genuinely meaningful. Organizations like people have stories, and when those stories are rooted in purpose, they become powerful forces for attraction, culture, and identity. We are committed to partnering with brands that want to lead with intention, cultivate vibrant workplace cultures, and become the kind of employer that top talent seeks out, not because of perks, but because of purpose. I've had the privilege of leading Maxwell Management Group's growth into a highly specialized national executive search and education firm, one that thrives on values, vision, and the belief that when people lead with purpose, extraordinary things happen. To find out more about our executive search, recruitment, and education services, please visit us at maxwellmanagementgroup.com.
And so, how do those three lenses, social, legal, and executive, come together in your leadership today?
I think I make a lot of decisions um, from the social work perspective. Of course, the CEO perspective has to do with, the risk and the reputation of your company, financial sort of stability where you are. But I think as an organization, not just me, but I would say as the ownership of this organization, we really do start with, what is the impact and what is it going to be on our staff? We're a huge employer. We have over 10,000 employees, about the same from a resident perspective. And so, we don't make decisions in silos. And so for me, I spend a lot of time out in our sites, in our communities, interacting with both residents and staff. And the reason I do that is because, your why and what it is that you ultimately do has to be front of mind in the decisions you make. And I think if we spend a significant amount of time just in our offices, that we often lose sight of why we are making these decisions. And so a little bit of that is the social work. I mean, of course, it is a very social type of profession where you are interacting with individuals on a regular basis. And so I think that would be sort of a positive. The legal piece doesn't hurt. I mean, obviously, I understand the law and risk and, the regulatory landscape. And so, between those two backgrounds, I feel like there's a lot for me to consider before I sort of, leap into something.
Mhm. I love what you said because it sounds like, you really are intentional about taking care of your people. And we know that when you take care of your people, they are going to take care of the residents, right? At the end of the day. So that brings me to my next question, Salima, which is how would you overall describe your leadership style today and how has it evolved over the years?
Sure. Yeah. I think leadership is sort of, the individuals that directly report to you, but also the individuals that report to them, right? And especially in an organization of this size, we have multiple different sort of layers of individuals that are responsible for a variety of pieces. I think that um, in the way that we try and demonstrate as a leadership team, we try and ensure that those individuals that are at a community level are the most empowered that they can be, and allow them to make as many decisions as they can. I think when you're an organization of our size, consistency is important, right? Things can get out of control very quickly if there isn't clear guidance and sort of parameters around how we are going to implement things or around how we're going to sign contracts, for example, or engage with our vendors. But I think once the team has put those policies in place, then the teams really do a great job of sort of running the communities, and all of that sort of just rolls up into different types of strategies, right? So then we have sort of regional directors that are responsible from that perspective, and then VPs, and then senior VPs, and then of course myself and that senior VP team works with me. I think we have a very competent group of individuals, and we do spend a lot of time together, weekly, sometimes more, looking at issues and trying to resolve them. I think that not being the subject matter expert is a good thing. I don't think you can be the subject matter expert on everything, but I do think that you need to have individuals that are strong, and that can bring the information forward for you to collectively make a decision.
Mhm. That is so important that you empower your team, as you said, and especially the frontline staff, right? That have that direct contact, so much of that direct contact with the residents. I just think that is so huge, Salima, what you just said. And so, if your team described your leadership in three words, what would you hope that they would say?
Um, I think they would say that I'm driven. I think that that is quite obvious. That I'm caring. Um, and that I'm responsive. I think those would be sort of, if I think about the things that I try the most to be, it is accessible. Um,
Yes.
I think that where there are pieces that are within my purview, I'm very driven to get them done and to drive them. And that, um, and that, yeah, that when people need me, that I try and be available. I think that when you run an organization that is national, I, like yourself, spend a significant amount of time on the road. But we have large teams in all areas of the country. And so I think being visible, making sure that your teams can always reach you is important, even though physically you're not maybe always there. But I think, you don't, as a leader, want to be the barrier for your team, for them to be able to move things forward. And so, being available, giving guidance as needed, asking the right questions, I think all of those pieces are really important.
Absolutely. Asking the right questions, that is huge. And so I believe, if I have the numbers right, Salima, I believe you have something like 24 homes in Ontario, 14 in BC, and 14 in Alberta. That is such a large portfolio. And so, how do you navigate leading a large organization while raising a young family as well?
Well, I have a superstar of a husband, and so that makes a big difference. I have my parents who are quite involved with my children. My children are 13 and 16 now, soon to be. And so, older in the sense that, I'm not, worried about feeding them and those sort of things. They're independent. But I always say, big kids, big problems. And so, there's a different level of support and engagement that needs to happen at this age. And so, yeah, I try and be really mindful about where I spend my time. I have a very clear understanding of what my role and responsibility is, and I make sure that, in work and at home, that I execute on that. And then I'm also really mindful that, everybody else has a lot of work to do, and so try and be respectful of everybody else's workloads as well. I think our entire team. Has either children or grandchildren, and so they are involved in one of those phases. And so I think we try and be really mindful and excited for individuals as they go through different milestones with their families. I also have aging parents, they're 85 and 87. And so very much seeing that side of the spectrum as well as the day to day unfolds.
And that's why they're calling us the sandwich generation, right? Because so many of us have aging parents as well as children, and it's sometimes a lot to navigate, right? It's so true. And so what habits or boundaries have been essential for you, Salima?
Yeah, I think I try hard to be present when I am present. It is hard, the devices and the technology, and it's the flip side to what I said earlier of always being accessible and available. That that does require checking in, a couple of times in the evenings. I think in these positions you work when you can work, and so. Because of the travel or because of the demands and elsewhere, there are times where I work at off cycles, right? Either from a time zone perspective or because I've, had to take my kids to do something early and had to leave and then have to sort of, try and catch up in the evenings. And so I think working when it works for me has been important. I think also trying to take hard stops. I think this is the benefit of having children who are in school, is they have limited, very defined times off. And so I always say to my kids, like, if we work hard, we will play hard. And so we take good breaks. We visit interesting places. We love to travel. And so that is also a hard stop for me as well, right? Because when I get to do those things with them, I also am off. I think they understand that it's not always the case that when we're away that I'm also not working. Like there are times when you have to work in these types of positions. A big part of my role is stakeholder relations, and there are times where things are happening and I have to be available. But I think that when you prepare your family for that or your team for that, that there's going to be something that's coming up, they're far more forgiving of that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so true. And it's so important to have their support, isn't it, when you hold a position like this? And so, what would you say to leaders who feel like they're constantly being pulled in both directions?
Yeah, I think it's really important to know what your job duties are. So I'm very clear. For me, they are, the risk of the organization, external facing, stakeholder relationships, our brand, right? Like I very clearly know what my responsibility is, and the board knows those are my responsibilities, and we communicate on those things on a regular basis. And so I think it's important that you narrow and limit the work that you have to the responsibilities that you have, and then let the teams do their work, right? And so again, you're really not involved in the day to day unless there is an issue. And if there is an issue, then of course you're bringing in the right people and often, navigating through the issue with them. But generally speaking, I think you're just very clear on what your why is.
Mhm. And they always say being clear is kind, right? So I think you're touching on something that is really, really important to say and recognize is that sometimes when we're partnering with an organization to recruit a role, we receive a job description that's 10 years old. And, it's so important that we really make sure that every single person on our organization knows exactly what their role is and what their responsibilities are. So I'm so glad that you brought that up because, again, being clear is being kind. So I think that is just so important to say. And so at the end, right? Salima, did you want to comment on that more?
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely fair. And I think also, being clear means that there is sort of consistency, not just for you, but also for others around you, right? And so I think that that is important. I think the other piece is that, we have to work to people's strengths. And then we have to let them do what they're good at, right?
Yes.
Similarly, at home and at work, if you have a family member or a team member that's very good at something, then you have to let them do that. That is what their strength is, and that strength, in fact, then comes back and moves the entire team forward.
Yes, yes. That is powerful. That is so powerful. And so at the end of the day, beyond titles and responsibilities, what matters most to you about the impact you're having both as a leader and as a parent?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a leader, this is a people profession. I always say to people, age care is a people business. We don't make widgets. All of those things are important, but that's not who we are. And so I think what's most important to me from an age care perspective is that we're taking good care of the individuals that their loved ones have trusted us with. And so that's a big deal, right? To know that people are going through difficult transitions in their lives, and to have their parents or their siblings, or their loved ones come into our homes as their home is a significant transition. And so, when we meet individuals, we meet them when they're going through crisis and going through trauma. These are big changes in lives. And so I think what's most important for me is how we do those transitions in our communities. I always say, we can create all the policies and all the frameworks, but none of that really matters if what we're doing at a community level is not the right thing. If we are not interacting in the right way, if we are not being loving and caring, and welcoming. And so that really is the most important piece. And everything that we do, every decision that we make, every allocation that we make goes towards that. We constantly ask ourselves, how does this impact the experience that our residents are going to have within our communities? I think from a home perspective, yeah, I mean, we try and sort of be a partnership at home, my husband and I. When you get kids at that 13 and 16, there's lots of creativity happening in our homes. There's lots of, everybody has a different thing they want to do. Everybody has a different angle. And so, we try and have hard stops. We usually, get together and have what we call sort of, our informal family meetings, whether that's just going out for dinner on a Friday night, which is typically what happens, catching up, but then also spending time with the kids sort of where they are with their own strategic plan, right? I think our kids have very much realized that, their life is quite similar to a business in the sense that they have goals and things they like to do, and so we do spend a lot of time talking about how they're progressing on some of those things, but obviously in a more informal way. I'm not sure they know
Yes.
that that's what we're doing, but we definitely sort of check in on them on a regular basis, ask a lot of the same questions. Because in many ways, your home is no different in the sense that you have to be able to have people understand where they want to go and how they're going to get there.
That is so true. I love how you sum that up. And our homes, I just feel is like they're the most sacred thing, both our own homes and the homes of the residents that the residents live in. And I just love your mission that is on your website and how it's really summed up saying that, you're dedicated to creating vibrant seniors communities, which I think is so great, and celebrating and supporting aging with dignity, independence, and community interaction. So I love how you sum that up because it is the resident's home. And I just feel like it's one of the most important jobs in the world that we have is to protect our most vulnerable and certainly our seniors. So I love how you have summed that up at AgeCare. And so this has been such a powerful start to our conversation, Salimah. Thank you. In part two, we are going to explore how you build high performing teams, balancing empathy with accountability, and why staying deeply connected to every home is a leadership priority.
Before we go, if you're looking to strengthen leadership within your own organization, Maxwell Management Group offers executive search, leadership development, and education programs, including our Director of Care and Training program, which we've had the privilege of delivering with AgeCare. Visit maxwellmanagementgroup.com to learn more. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in part 2.
So thank you for joining us today. Please feel free to visit our website at maxwellmanagementgroup.com. And also, please like and subscribe to our podcast wherever you download podcasts. Thank you for joining and see you next time.